Bring the chainsaw, we can cut the counter down.
At this time, I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening to the Marshall City Council meeting. We do have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? We'll operate under that agenda. The first agenda item would be to consider the approval of the minutes from the work session, a special meeting, and a regular meeting. All of those were held on November 9th, 2021. So the council does have the minutes of all three meetings. Are there any corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Don to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We'll move to a vote.
Give me a second.
Close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to the next agenda item, which would be agenda item number 2, this is the award of bids for the authorization to approve the towing and storage agreement. Kyle
Thank you.
Box, our city clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Every 2 years, the city goes out for bids for our towing and storage contract. This year, Pulver Motor Service was the only bid. They're by default the low bid. The contract changes are noted. Minor changes in the contract. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kyle. Are there any questions? Is there a motion?
So, say, just
Go
a
ahead, John.
quick, what was our rate last year, or last time on the contract for the per vehicle?
So the price per vehicle for the last contract was $75 per vehicle tow.
Just
And then the
$5.
outside storage decreased from 40 to 35
Okay,
for inside storage, excuse me.
all right.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting, and the motion passes. We'll move then to the consent agenda. Will be next on our agenda. We'll bring those items up on the screen. And they include, consider the approval of a permit to allow alcoholic beverages at city-owned facilities. Consider authorization to declare bicycles as surplus property of the Marshall Police Department. Consider the authorization to declare vehicles as surplus property for the Marshall Police Department. We have some surplus items for the wastewater department. And consider the approval of temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for the Friends of the Orchestra Limited. And then finally, consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for separate discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
So move. Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 9, consider the approval of the partnership agreement between the City of Marshall and Marshall Municipal Utilities. There was a prior meeting between representatives of the Marshall Municipal Utilities Commission, as well as Councilmember DeCramer, who's our liaison member to the Utilities Commission, and myself, along with staff, to review this recommendation that's coming to the council, which will be presented by our utilities manager, Superintendent Dave Shelkoff. Dave?
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you. My name is Dave Shelkoff. I'm the general manager for MMU, or Marshall Municipal Utilities. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Well, I want to give that to you in attendance here, but also to people on the internet. There's a lot of people that want you, which is really good to hear. Anyways, the MMU Organizational Committee met with city representatives to review the draft City of Marshall and MMU 2022 Partnership Agreement. We met on October 25th, 2021. The Joint Committee reviewed all proposed changes to the partnership agreement and has recommended that the draft agreement be offered to the City Council for consideration and approval. Included in the 2022 partnership agreement are two changes specifically asked for by this council when we met a little over a year ago. You asked for a red line change addition, and we were able to give that to you. The committee was able to give that to you. And the second thing that we were asked to look at was the engineering services agreement that we have with the city, MMU has with the city. And both of those were looked at, and we have changes in both of those. I believe the committee was able to deliver answers for you on both requests. The following is a list, and I will go through that list with you today. So if we go to the first page of the agreement, you'll notice that there's a line through number 9, agreement number 9, and that is our IT and telephone and IT shared services. That was deleted. In 2020, basically, I believe the city started to separate from MMU with IT support. And of course, with phone support, we were not able to do anything or change anything until this building was built in 2021. So with the finishing of this building, the telephone service is now changed from MMU partnership, and you have gone with VAST, I believe, with their telephone service. So with that, we really have no need for this agreement, so it was deleted from the list. And is there any questions about that particular deletion? All right, so moving on. If we go to Agreement 1, Agreement 1 is basically the pilot agreement, payment in lieu of taxes. And if we go to page 4 there, Page 3 of your report does show how we get to the pilot numbers, but on page 4 it gives you an overview of all of the numbers we're talking about in this agreement. They were reviewed and discussed by the committee. If we take a look at that, it looks like our pilot payments are reduced by about $16,000 over last year. And that is strictly due to lower energy sales during 2020. Right now, if you're familiar with our energy profile at MMU, about half of our energy sold is with one customer, and that is with ADM. ADM has changed their production line, and they have reduced their power somewhat, and that is why you're seeing a respective reduction in the pilot costs there. But I'm happy to report that ADM is looking at expanding their product line and doing some changes and hopefully seeing some changes and increased load out there in the future. Very important part of our partnership here in Marshall, Minnesota is ADM and their energy usage for MMU. If you go down that list then, the next you'll see streetlight costs. These are all costs that are established by a cost of rate study, and they are established every 3 years. In 2022, MMU will be doing another cost of service rate study, and we will then be giving you some new numbers for these things to consider at the next partnership agreement in 2023. You'll see those lists there, and it goes down at the end of the day. Marshall and all of these services, either in kind or financial payments, total $1,597,881. And totally, that's basically a non-change from 2021 to 2022 of 4.27% of our total income going to the city. Is there any question about that?
Yeah, I actually have a question on just for an example, on the streetlight costs. I know there was a big conversion to go from the sodium to the LEDs. Mm-hmm. Should that have not entered into as cost savings then? Or is it based on maintenance along with the energy use?
It's a great question, Council Member. I wanted, Schaefer, excuse me.
That's fine.
Council Member Schaefer. So that agreement is based upon the cost of cost of service rates that were created 3 years ago. And it's not based upon any kind of capital gain. That's already built into the overall capital budget of MMU. So, but at the same time, we are nearing the end of that. You're correct. Our last year was this year. We still have a little bit left. Main Street, if you notice, is still high pressure sodium. The yellow lights, okay. High pressure sodium is a very efficient lighting system. When you go to an LED, you're really saving about half the energy, not like going from an incandescent bulb to an LED. You're saving like a six times the savings by going to an LED bulb. But in a high pressure sodium situation, very efficient lighting yet. So you will save about half the load, but there's not a lot of them left. And the reason why we're waiting for Main Street is because of the big project in 2025, and that's College Drive. DOT is working with the city and with MMU to figure out what to do with the lighting there. The problem is that if you start getting different light heads, we kind of want to make those standard, not only for aesthetics, but also for future maintenance. Having a bunch of different styles of lighting heads in your closet, so to speak, in your stores, is very expensive and time consuming. If you don't have the right head when you're replacing or repairing, you gotta go back and get a different one. So we're trying to standardize that. So we're working with the manufacturers to make sure that we have the right equipment and the right lighting for Main Street and College Street when it finally gets done. But that's a great question, and I appreciate it. Again, we will be looking at that in 2022, and those numbers will be revisited.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a 50-50 cost share between the city and MMU. Of course, fire protection, it's a set price for the city. It's $145,000, and whatever the additional cost is, whether that goes up, down, how many times does it go down? MMU picks up that difference. Any other questions? If not, we can go to the other major changes in this agreement, and that is 5. That would be agreement number 5, which is the engineering agreement between the city and MMU. And last year, there was some discussion to take a look at that because these numbers have been the same for 10 years. And so I think that's a reasonable request, and we did that. Sat down with the city, got some ideas together, pulled together the total costs of that second engineer of the city, and the agreement is basically this. Between the city and MMU, we pay for 50% of that. But whatever money we pay to that goes towards projects. So if we have a water main project in conjunction with your street projects, city engineers that, they drop the drawings, they do all of that work that we would have to hire an outside contracting engineering firm to do for us. Now we're doing it with the city. It's kind of a win-win-win-win-win all the way through here. We help you with that cost, but at the same time, we have solid people that we know that do a great job for the engineering side of projects. We have a lot of work to do in Marshall, but we've already done a lot of work on our water main infrastructure. And so when we take a look at this increase, we increase that cost from $65,000 to $75,000. So when we got all the costs together, that's what we saw the difference from 10 years ago to this year, which really isn't that much. And what it also that we have to look at for MMU side, we have to do at least $468,000 a year worth of work to make sure that we're spending $75,000 here with the city. That's not hard to do anymore when we talk about putting in sewer 8 feet down, or water, I should say. Any questions about that? So we went from $65,000 to $75,000 baseline costs for the city. The next thing and the final thing really that we have to look at, and that is number 10. Number 10 is basically a very simple agreement between us and the city for chloride, salt in our water discharge at the sewer plant. And the real change there is one simple thing. We finished the water treatment plant. That's a good thing. So the wording, the verbiage in that particular agreement had to change to reflect the completion of that plant. And also we made it a little more clear about MMU's support of the city for educational opportunities on residential softeners, water softeners. So we're working with the city. Matter of fact, we have a scheduled meeting on the 7th of December to sit down and take next steps on how we're going to educate the public on water softeners. And if anybody out there listening, you have a water softener in Marshall and you haven't adjusted it yet, please do. It's gone from basically 38 grains hardness down to 8 grains of hardness. So if you have a water softener, please adjust your water softener accordingly. You'll save a lot of money and time on salt consumption. And that's what this is all about, is to reduce the amount of salt in our wastewater that gets then released into the river system. So save you, what we figured anywhere between $25 to $50 a year in salt. Could be higher, depends on how much you use. And with the size of your family, of course, or if you have teenagers at home, right? So I appreciate, that's the last change that we have in the agreement this year. Is there any questions? Any comments?
Thank you, Dave. Any questions or input? Thank you for the thoroughness and thank you for the collaborative work that MMU does with the city.
Yeah, we appreciate that friendship and that relationship. We do. Sharon and her team are wonderful. Wonderful to work with.
Thank you.
With that, if there are no questions, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the partnership agreement.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Don. Discussion on that motion. If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
We'll move then to agenda item number 10, consideration of the approval of the amended Memorandum of Understanding with Marshall Amateur Hockey Association, Maha, regarding the ice times fee and the food service agreement for 2021 through 2029. Dennis, are you going to start with this? Or
I guess I thought Kyle would have. Well, Mr. Johnson will take it.
thank you for stepping up.
Well, that was fast.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom.
Practice.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Josh Johnson, President of Marshall Hockey Association. I believe what you have before you is the updated Memorandum of Understanding for the Red Baron Arena as it pertains to ice time as well as concession time as well. And before we get into that, I think the council and your constituents deserve a little bit of an update on Maha. You know, the Red Baron is quite the facility, and taxes do go to support that facility. So it's important that everybody maybe get a little bit of update on that. So just a few slides here to kind of go through on that. I'm assuming Kyle's going to be my. If he really starts flipping through slides, that means I'm talking too much, and that's probably what it is. So, but really, just to start off, our philosophy and vision and mission and our value statement. When we look at things that come before our board and what the direction of where we're going to take our athletes and our organization, this is what we live by. If it doesn't fall within this, it doesn't get done or it moves off to the side. And how do we do that? How do we, especially our values of fair play, growth, and success? How do we do that? We extensively train our coaches. They go through Minnesota Hockey and USA Hockey training. We stress the importance on grades. So if your grades ain't good, you ain't playing hockey. It's a pretty easy formula there. All our coaches support that. They will sit you. You can be the best player, but if you're not getting the grades, you're going to be sitting on the bench. And then we also do community outreach, and it's something that I'm very proud of our organization, Hockey Hometown Heroes. Last year we weren't able to do this. We've done this historically in the past. Each team at each level is charged and has to complete a community service project. We don't decide. What I think is really cool about this, we don't decide what that is. The team decides. So various things. I know our Bantams this year hung lights for hospice, went out and helped hang lights. Girls varsity helped with the blood drive at the Red Baron. When we were able to do it, teams would go play bingo at Heritage Point or wherever. So it's really good that we do this, but I think it's even better that we charge the team with making that decision, making it important to them. So that's really, when it comes down to our values, I always say we want good hockey players, we want competitive hockey teams, but that's 1A. 1B is we want to crank out good humans. When they leave Marshall Hockey, when they go on, they represent us well in the community. So just some few quick annual stats, a little review of Marshall Hockey. We kind of rang the bell this year, 196 athletes. Our high prior to that, we haven't hit that, so we're pretty proud of that. When we started in 2012, I just went back to 2012, we were 140 athletes at the old Lockwood rink. So you can see, obviously, you can probably tell on the graph when we moved to the Red Baron, a little uptick in athletes there. Also, I wanted to kind of compare ourselves to others, what our costs are and how we work with our athletes. In that, Maha, and those numbers you see on there are the most expensive athletes. So it'd be a Bantam athlete, a 14U player. So we're going to bookend this a little bit. A mite is like $50. Okay, and a Bantam player is $400, and it just gradually gets more and more expensive throughout that. But I didn't want to bore you with each level and each range, so I just took what would it be for the most expensive level. And also, it's good to note too that Maha, if it's your first year and you want to try hockey, it's free. We provide all the equipment. And we provide all the equipment for ages 8 and down, and we've been known to find equipment for ages 8 and up as well. If you are in a situation where you need help with equipment, we find that for you. So Maha costs $400. I don't know if you guys have heard of these puck buck cards. You see the little ones running around selling puck buck cards. That directly impacts their registration. Marshall has a unique blend that is not found in the state. And it's something that I get to kind of brag about when I go to Minnesota hockey meetings is, we're, $775, but $375 of that can be made up in selling puck buck cards. So when you buy a puck buck card from a hockey player, know when you're handing that money over, it directly impacts dollar for dollar their registration. There's no spiff in there for Marshall Hockey. You're impacting that player that's standing in front of you directly. I just realized right as I was walking in here, I abbreviated some things here, and I apologize. Noose, New Ulm Sleepy Eye. We just call them Noose in our world. So, for them to register, it's a Bantam is $1,025. Litchfield is a little over $1,400, and Hutch is $1,200. So towns of similar size, similar makeup. I tried to choose something that was similar to Marshall inside of that. The asterisks besides Noose and Hutch are you have to pay tournament fees as well as you have to buy your own jersey. So in Marshall Hockey, your $400 plus the $375 pays for your jersey. If you need equipment, we can get you equipment. And we also provide the jerseys as well. So it just gives you a little bit of an opportunity to look at that and kind of compare ourselves to other folks around there. It's really important for us to keep that number down low. Allows access to hockey to maybe some families that would not be able to access hockey. If you're in Litchfield, Minnesota, and you're paying $1,400 for your Bantam player, that's a pretty steep price. Plus, they still have fundraising obligations. All these organizations have fundraising obligations outside of that. Scholarships, we average around 10 to 15 per year. Some of those are 50% scholarships. Some of those are 100% scholarships, really based on need. We really sit down with those families and try to figure out a way. And we usually are running about 8 to 10 payment plans per year as well. So helping those folks out, letting them access hockey, working with them, could be $25 a month. I mean, whatever it takes for that kid to be able to play hockey. Concession revenues as well, I thought we'd address that. So since we started at the Red Baron, 2017, Maha did not have the concession at that point. That was contracted out, and it didn't work out the way everybody wanted it to work out, so Maha was asked to pick that up. So in 2018, we picked that up and currently hold a license for that. You'll see our total revenues over that span of time have been just a touch over $95,000. And with today's agreement, our total donations to the arena are $94,445. So the money that's generated from the concessions is going back into the arena. What's unique and what we like about this, and what works well, is it creates a partnership between Marshall Hockey and the Red Baron Arena. If a sound system, we've done things like the scoreboard and the sound system, heaters in the boxes, so when you're scoring, you're not freezing your feet off. And then half the purchase is Zamboni. It allows Marshall Hockey to engage with the arena and really help the arena and benefit the arena, but also that benefits us. It's really truly a partnership out there and a culture of partnership on that. So that, again, helps us offset registration costs. And we do have fundraising outside of concessions, but those types of fundraising activities, we do power skating in June, and as long as we have the revenue to do it, there's no charge to the athletes for that. We have community ice at Independence Park last year, which worked out to be a phenomenal deal because we could be outside, right? It was really cool for me to swing through there and not only see hockey players, but figure skaters and dads and moms and cousins out there with kids just being outside, because that's where we could be at that time. And Maha's excited to continue that at the park. We're going to be budgeting in a liner every year for that thing, and we're excited to do so. And we're excited to keep talking with Preston about expanding that to different parks and different locations inside of Marshall. So with that, so that's what some of our revenues go for as well. Future of Maha. Short-term planning, community, I touched on a little bit, community expansion within the parks system. Equipment, like I said, as we grow, and as we bring in more people, there's more of a need for equipment. We are, again, that's unique just to Marshall. If you go, and when I sit in these Minnesota hockey meetings, and you go and talk to other associations, they don't do that. That's not part of they can't afford to do that. They can't afford to go buy 40 helmets to give out helmets that are not outdated and that are safe. All their dollars are going into other areas of their program, mainly ice time. And then we need to prepare for that increased capacity too as well. We really do project a growth model. We are growing. We are one of the few in our district, Southwest Minnesota, that are growing. Most others are stagnant or retracting. Some long-term planning, again, partnerships with the Red Baron Arena, storage and dryland facilities. When the building was built, it's a phenomenal facility. There's just a few shortcomings in that building, which is not uncommon. When you build something of that size, it's kind of like when you buy a house, you go and live in it, and you go, we should move the kitchen over here. It's not uncommon. So, but therein lies some partnerships with the Red Baron Arena. We know they need more storage. We need more storage. Again, we can engage with that. Program investments and scholarships, again, are a pretty big deal to us. It allows us to get kids into hockey and play it and be able to afford it. And so that's going to be always an ongoing concern. And recognition. In fact, I just got an email today. I haven't been able to send it out to our membership, but Minnesota Hockey is recognized Marshall Hockey as silver level association with only 2 or 3 items that we're not addressing that we need to get to gold. And I'm pretty darn proud of our organization for doing that and working on that, especially after last year and the stuff that we had to concentrate on to get through that. So, and ice time, camps and clinics and leagues. Sometimes I feel like the toddler in the room. I'm always asking for more ice time, more ice time, more ice time. And I've expressed the arena, we would like to see two sheets of ice starting in October, where now we get the second sheet late October at the earliest. So, Maha is looking to spend more money out there and more ice time as well. Camps, clinics, and leagues, as well as attracting more regional play. So Marshall was awarded two district playoffs for District 4 Minnesota Hockey. Also, we were awarded a regional playoff as well from Marshall. And so we're pretty excited about that and proud of that. It does not come without its challenges. We do have a challenge in Marshall with the lack of hotel rooms. We are running into that. A little bit of our headwind, we'd say a challenge. We have lost some teams from our tournaments this year already because of the lack of ability to put heads in beds. And so that is a concern. It's also a concern. We want these teams staying in the city of Marshall. We want their dollars here. But when they're staying in Canby and Montevideo, Granite Falls, and Redwood, those communities are benefiting from our event here in Marshall. So, just a little update for you on Maha with that. Any questions? Oh yeah, my last one. I forgot about this one. Ice Dogs obviously were a big win for us last year. On behalf of Marshall Hockey, I want to personally thank all of you for supporting having the Ice Dogs come to town. That was a leap of faith by a lot of leaders when we said, we'll make this happen and we'll do it safely. And you looked right at me and said, okay, let's do this. And we did it. And we did it safely. And we were able to recognize a lot of great players and a lot of good things from that. So we do appreciate that. Any questions on that stuff before we get into the nitty-gritty of the Memorandum of Understanding?
Thank you, Josh.
Before you in your packets, you should have the Memorandum of Understanding. This is something that we had discussed probably a couple of years ago, and we went back to it with city staff on it, and we were working on it. And then a little thing called the pandemic happened. And I had asked Sharon and staff if we could put that on pause. City of Marshall was dealing with plans and contingencies and things like that. Marshall Hockey was dealing with plans and contingencies and on all sorts of items. So we paused it, and then we took this back up here again now. We are currently operating with no agreement, but we are operating under good faith. at this time. So, and any agreement that we do come to will be retroactive to the September timeframe that we have on here. So, you'll see here the major points here: the ice rink rental fees. $770 the first 450 hours, $50 an hour thereafter. That runs through the 2025 season. And then there is language in there that does also allow for an increase and a renegotiation after that part. And that would bring us then through the 28-29 season as well. The other major change into this was the concession. Maha asked city staff if this could agreement run concurrent with our ice time. If you know, before, every year we'd have to come and renew the concession agreement. And that was by design. If you recall, 2017, we didn't have it. 2018, Maha took over. We wanted to make sure that we could fulfill the expectation of the city, and the city wanted to make sure that we could do it. And I think we've proven that, as well as providing services for any events that are happening out there as well. We provide 4 to 6 events for the city out there. We provide the concessions for that are not hockey related. Within that agreement, there's always been some discussion around, well, when something breaks, who pays for it? When the refrigerator turned sideways and we lost all our food in it, who pays for the refrigerator to be repaired? And those aren't cheap. And so throughout the discussion around this, Maha requested that instead of putting, we threw around the idea of putting a certain amount of money aside every year payable to the city, and then the city would run the separate line item, to be able to offset repairs and things like that. We just said, why don't you just donate the equipment over to us? It was donated to the city with the agreement of the sponsor. When that equipment was put in, it was donated by that sponsor. Why don't you just donate that over to us? We'll take on the concessions. And if it breaks, we'll fix it. If it needs updating, we'll fix it. We're looking at updates to the concession stand in the tune of $25,000 just to meet our needs and some discrepancies that are in the concession stands now. So why not have Maha take that on? Why should the city put $25,000 of updated equipment in there for our use? We're the ones getting the revenue, and then using that revenue for the arena. But why not have us take care of it? And it also takes away the argument with the Red Baron staff. And these are good arguments, by the way. When the refrigerator does break, we say, "Well, let us pay the bill," and they say, "No, it's in our budget." And no, let us pay the bill, and they say, "No, it's in our budget," and we need, it takes away that argument, because it's the Minnesota nice argument, I always say. It's I'm gonna pick up the check. No, I'm going to pick up the check. It takes that away, and it just puts it in the responsibility of us. And within that, Dennis Simpson has put verbiage in there that in the event that Maha wouldn't fulfill or would leave the concession stand for any reason, that equipment has to be there and be left there as well. So and in good working order. We got it in good working order, we would leave it in good working order as well. So I don't ever foresee that, but I thought that was good language to have in there in the event that Maha, 5 years from now said, we don't want to do that anymore. So with that, those are the major changes within there. I would entertain any questions.
Well, thank you, Josh, and thank you for yours as well as others' work on this. So, questions?
I move approval of the agreement as presented.
Motion by Craig. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Now, discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Russ?
Josh, I really respect your comments this evening and respect the emails that I received from parents informing me of the commitment that they have made to Maha and the Maha has made to them with their children and things like that. I cannot, and I don't think any member of this council can find any fault with the passion or commitment or dedication of Maha. What I have a hard time understanding and going through this agreement is that our costs as a city continue to increase. Labor, facility upgrades, facility things, our costs continue to upgrade. I think when we talked about this agreement back in 2019, I don't remember, Dennis, did we propose a $5 or a $10 increase? Are these rates the same as 2019 that we talked about, or?
They are.
They are the same that was in place then?
I believe so.
So the increase that we talked about that Josh was going to take back to the board is not reflected here. Is that correct?
I believe there's no increase.
Because I think even Councilman Schaefer, and I'm not going to put him on the hook, but I think we talked in 2019 about increasing very minimally to help the city offset some of our costs. And I'm going to use the example, if you're selling concessions and according to, I think, agreements that the city has, you have to sell pizza from a certain vendor.
Yeah.
So that pizza today, or last year, was $10 or $3 a pizza. They're going to increase it by $3.50. So they're increasing the cost to you. Are you going to sell that same slice of pizza for the same price? I would hope not, because that's the cost of doing business. You know, you can't continue to sell that slice of pizza that you did at the same price 2 years. And it's maybe a very poor example, but I'm looking at salary and wages for the city of Marshall. I mean, they go up 3.5%, maybe more. We're looking at a comparable worth study. Maybe those wages are going to go up more for those employees next year. We don't know that at this point. Our costs continually go up. And I appreciate and again, I go back to the commitment that Maha has made with the Zamboni, with taking over the concessions and the commitments that you have shown us tonight with all those things. I'm not going to find fault with that. But I hope you understand and Maha understands that if it's presented tonight this way without changing, I will be voting no, because I think we need a minimal increase. And maybe not this year because of COVID last year, but I would like to see even a $5 an hour increase over the course of the contract. I think Councilman Lozinski, correct me if I'm wrong, $70 an hour for the first 450 hours is $31,000.
Yes, I did the math.
$31,000.
$31,500.
$31,000. So if we increase that by $5, it's not that much of an increase. But yet, on the other hand, it helps us pay some of our fixed cost. One of our fixed costs last year was a $75,000 to $90,000 repair bill on the pipes. We didn't come to Maha and say, can you help us with that? No, because that's a city responsibility. If the roof leaks, that's a city responsibility. That's not a Maha responsibility. And we appreciate the donations that Maha has made. The partnership, you can't put a dollar value on that. Whether it's a partnership with Maha, Mpca, or the football program or anything else, those are valuable, valuable partnerships. Do those partnerships exist in some of the other communities, Sleepy Eye, New Ulm, Litchfield, and Hutchinson? I don't know that. But I would also ask, what are those communities paying for ice time? Are they paying less? Are they paying more?
They are paying substantially more, Councilman.
Substantially more. So I don't want to put you on the hook. Would you say this is a very good deal?
I think this is a fair deal. I was trying to go through my notes here while you were speaking, but I believe the 75 was put in the verbiage for the increase. If you look at that, I believe that's where that got stuck.
It's $70 on my sheet.
Yeah, but on the increase for the after.
Oh,
the,
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I'm only talking, that's for the future years.
Yeah.
And I think we had talked back in 2019 of increasing $5 for the first hour. And I maybe somebody can help me. Did we talk about $10 an hour for the additional one or something? I don't remember.
I believe it was 75 and 55. And Craig, I think Steve's shaking his head, right? And when you say the verbiage is 75, that's a maximum in 4 years.
Right.
We don't know what our costs for that. I mean, that's,
The other factor, though, and Josh, thank you for a thorough presentation, but one of the factors that wasn't brought out and is that our operational costs are supported by the food and beverage tax.
Exactly.
That's what the voters put in place.
And
to
that's the purpose of
support
it. I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to disagree with that. But again, a little bit extra, and again, if you raise your price a little bit every year, it's better than raising it a whole bunch in 5 years. And I'm not saying we go up $5 a year. I'm just saying from 2021 to 2025, I'd like to see $75 and $55 myself.
Sharon, you had a comment?
One of the discussion points that we went back and forth on is membership and participation, and I'm glad that Josh showed the membership fees in comparable cities. You'll notice that they're a lot higher. And increase in ice rink rental fees would undoubtedly fall back on participants. And I know that the Hockey Association is always strives to get more kids. They're trying to diversify a little bit more, and the cost is something that they consider to be really, really important for their families. So when we talked about increasing the hourly rate, one of our factors was what would that mean for participants, and would we see a decline or a leveling off of participants? The other thing that, and correct me too, Josh or Craig, the one thing that I think we're missing here a little bit is the donation to help pay for the Zamboni, which was in the memo. And I calculate that out to be about $14 per hour. If you take
The board for all hours.
well, I calculated the first $4.50.
Okay.
So if you want to take $5 and spread it out, but I calculate the donation paying for half of the Zamboni about $14 per hour, if you wanted to apply that to the rental rate. But the big factor for us was how will this affect participation, and how do we continue to grow the program? And I know Josh and his representatives would agree with that as well. So I don't know if Councilmember Schaefer
I'd like to
wanted to
input.
add something to that.
I do, absolutely. I think we think about this and go back, and Josh, thank you for the presentation and for the inclusion of the scholarships and the other mentorships and support of new families coming in. As a community, we've worked really hard to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, okay? And that's what Josh just presented, is hockey is another avenue, okay? We don't play soccer in the wintertime. You know, there's not a lot of winter sports for kids. I've had a son and a grandson go through the hockey program here, and if you think that the $450 registration fee going to $900 would be a big thing for the parent, that's chump change. When you spend $1,200 or $1,300 for a pair of skates alone, my wife was texting me during your presentation, by the way. She said, great job. She said, I hope people realize that the ice time is small. Look at the equipment, not to mention the dedication. Do you know how far these teams travel to play a game? The closest game is Redwood, okay? Most of the trips are 60 plus miles. Not to mention tournaments and all the rest of that. Sharon made the perfect point. When this facility was sold to the taxpayers, the local option sales tax to pay the bonds and the food and beverage, or the food and beverage tax, hospitality, was to pay the operations. As far as I know, it's doing it well, okay? We're doing it okay. Even through COVID, we're doing it okay. My proposition is, if at some point in time that fails, we probably need to sit back down with Maha and revisit it. But right now, why are we whipping a winning horse? Because that's what we're doing. And I'm a little bit frustrated because we've asked a question every meeting, where are we at with the Maha agreement? Well, you know why it takes so long? Because we're nitpicking them for $5. And I'll stop there.
Other discussion on the motion?
Well, just the question I was going to ask Josh is Sharon brought up hours, so the public knows, how many hours do you rent the ice?
Oh, I would have to get with my treasurer on that.
2,000?
At least.
So, I mean, the Zamboni and the hourly rate for the $5 probably is a wash over 6 years or 5 years.
Basically, when you look at the, Councilman Lozinski, when you look at it, we're paying the 65 grand. It's 60,
65 grand.
yeah, $65,000. We're pre-buying that higher rate.
Correct.
We're just saying, you know what, instead of charging us a higher rate and you in the city buying a Zamboni, how about we help offset your budget, buy half the Zamboni, and in turn, we don't have to go to 75 and go to 70.
That's what I'm trying to justify. It's about a wash in your mind.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't like about the agreement is pigeonholing the city into the $75 when we renegotiate. Not saying we'll go higher, but if something would happen, we're now pigeonholed at that 75. Let's say the roof fails and we got a major expenditure. That's my only concern of the agreement is if we could remove that and not pigeonhole the city into the maximum of 75 in 2025. Otherwise, I can throw my support behind the agreement with them sharing the cost on the Zamboni.
We would never make up the difference in a price of a roof with the ice time rental anyway. I mean, the building maintenance and ownership, there's a reason why they're happy about this. I mean, they came into this owning their own facility, built it under, and I still have DNA on the rebars in the county building because I wire tied rebar.
And Craig, I understand that.
Paid for and built that.
I understand that, but if we support Maha this way, we also have to support MABE and we have to support
And we
all
do.
the other organizations. I think it allows the city to, and I'm not saying we're gonna raise it more than 75. I don't think it's a good idea to pigeonhole ourselves into a number that's 5 years down the road.
Okay, other discussion on the motion?
And again, Mr. Mayor, I respect Councilman Schaefer's opinion, but the city is a business. It's a big business. And I think we have a responsibility, fiscally responsibility, to make good decisions for our taxpayers, plain and simple. And, and that's my opinion, And I respect, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I have the utmost respect for Maha. The passion, dedication, and commitment that parents, kids, supporters have. I mean, you can't talk enough about that, Josh. It really is. So.
I just, a couple of things, and I would have to say I appreciate and agree with a number of things that both Russ, you, and Jim have said, but I do see an advantage in this, and it's not the financial. I think we're looking beyond the financial on this thing. We may want to consider this a business, but we are a city.
Right.
And we've got a community. And we've got a community of people out there to bring in and offer opportunities for them for health and education and a whole lot of other things. And I don't see this as a profit and loss thing that we need to try and make a profit. I see that we've got a community that's going to either share in the expense of what we've got in the arena, or we're going to try and put it on the hockey community that's in here. And I would prefer seeing it shared. I don't go out and play hockey. I have no problem a little bit of the taxes that may be involved in this going to hockey and allowing for some of those 200 kids that are out there that are going to be playing to do so at a low rate. I think that's an important aspect of it. We're presenting them with an opportunity, like I said, to get educated, to learn just team organization, team management, being a team member, and getting out there. So I am in favor of this. I did second it, and fully realizing that, this is probably not a profit and loss thing, and I'm fine with that.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not, I'll bring us to a vote on this question, and the question on the motion on the table is the approval of the partnership, or approval of the Memorandum of Understanding with Marshall Area Hockey Association for ice times and for the food service agreement.
That also includes the Zamboni contribution is also listed in there, I believe.
That is correct. So with that, I'll bring us to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Thank you, Josh, on behalf of the organization, the Maha organization, all the members and board members and families involved. So,
Yeah,
and
thank
thank you
you.
for all of the volunteer work that you all do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for making the community look awesome out there. You guys do a fantastic job.
We'll move then back to the agenda. We are on agenda item number 11. This is consider the request of Shades of the Past Car Club for a roll-in on May 5th, 2022. Any questions on this request? Is there a motion? Oh, excuse me. Go ahead. Jason, did you have anything you wanted to say first?
No, I would just introduce it as this is a similar request to last year's inaugural event, and I'll turn it over.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Chad Wye, board member of Shades of the Past. And we're looking to do our second annual roll-in, May 5th, 2022. We're asking for the council's recommendation to shut down Main Street from 6th Street to College Drive from the hours of 2 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay, thank you, Chad. And last year was your initial year, and it was, from what I observed, highly successful. I didn't see, was there any issues that you encountered?
Yeah, so late 2019, we had the idea of let's get some people out. Some restrictions were coming off of COVID, so we thought, what a great way to get people downtown, help out the downtown businesses. So it passed last year. We had the event. We had some music. We had some face painting. We had over 100 vehicles and motorcycles. Tons of great comments from business owners and attendees. So it was a very good success.
Great. Any questions?
The only question I have is, it says here there's a contractor that was upset, but why is this any different than when we shut down Main Street for Crazy Days or for SMSU Parade or, I mean, we shut Main Street down 4 or 5 times a year, don't we?
I think that's a fair point, Councilman, and yes, there was an upset contractor. There was difficulties transferring overweight loads north up 59 with that closure. It was conveyed to us that resulted in excessively long alternative routes to the point of hours out of the way, I believe. So that's what was conveyed to us. Anytime you shut down a state highway that carries as much truck traffic as that does, it is a challenge. We do have to put up a significant detour. You do run them through neighborhoods, making turning movements that they don't normally have to make and have a very difficult time making with all the traffic. But all that aside, yes, we received the one complaint. We do close Main Street numerous times a year, and you're correct about that. And
In
MnDOT
addition, it's the spring load weight limits, the timing of it.
Oh, sure.
And my understanding is Department of Transportation, not so much Shades of the Past. It's more on Department of Transportation that initiates the permit 72 hours before, and I think the mayor maybe could have some influence on that.
Right, so that's really a conversation that we need to have with MnDOT, is the amount of time prior to the actual event, because, they provide that notification, but does the restriction really need to be in place prior to the actual event? And I think we can have that conversation.
Well, and I guess the other question I'd ask is, couldn't we route, they say, you said hours, but couldn't we route that truck traffic up 33 and back to North 59?
That's dependent on load limits in the
Is there
spring.
load limits on 33? Okay.
I believe there's bridges with load restrictions on some of these alternative routes that really provided the major challenge, and it caused a really significant detour. That's my recollection. It was a year ago.
If it's a heavy load with a drop decks will hang up on that bridge. That
Oh, they
bridge
will.
has got too much arch.
Okay. Just, thank you, I just read that and
I thought the same thing right away, and it's the bridge. They can't get over the bridge on 33.
Any other questions?
now we're not fixing the bridge.
Jim actually asked my question, so it was good. Yep.
There's no other questions?
I did have one question. Were there any complaints, any law enforcement issues for that event?
None.
Perfect.
None, not
Thank
at
you.
all. Everyone social distance, no super spreader event. It was just a great time. I mean, I heard 100 compliments. I mean, I couldn't go anywhere without somebody, dragging us aside, telling us how much fun they were having and what a great event it was, so.
The smell of slipping belts and higher octane fuel is always a little exhilarating.
It was. There was a little bit of that. There was
The slipping belt, hot rubber, the belts are loose.
and I will say it was kind of fun laying a little burnout on Main Street when it was shut down before. So you don't get an opportunity to do that very often. Yeah.
Jim's Mustang does that all the time.
No comment on that. I buy my own tires, it does not.
So, any other questions? I would entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we'll move then to agenda item number 12, the contract between Minnesota State Colleges and University and the City of Marshall to provide the data center support. Sharon, you want to start with this?
I will introduce this topic. I do have Brian Hart from the Computer Man here, as he's our IT consultant. He did a lot to transition us from MMU to SMSU in the late 2019. So in January of 2020, we fully operated our data center out of SMSU. It was a great location for us, not only because we were temporarily housed at SMSU in 2020 during the construction of City Hall, but they also have some really good capacity there as well. I wanted Brian to come here because somebody might ask a question about dark fiber and I need him to explain it, but I also wanted Brian to just talk a little bit about the arrangement and how well it's been working. In addition, just kind of explain a little bit about redundancy. I know that MMU, just because of their systems, I know that was key for them, and they had a system set up for their redundancy. We do too, and I think Brian can share that. Just one more thing to add about this contract. We feel that the amounts are reasonable. One of the things that we didn't do with City Hall construction was build out our data center server room here. We figured if we would have done it, it probably would have been $100,000 approximately. Heating, cooling, which I guess there's heat in there, but there isn't really appropriate cooling for a server system, and fire suppression is another factor when building this. So we are paying lease or rent rate, of course, and the cost is $7,800. If you add that up over a period of time, is this something the city should consider in the future, is construction of a server room? I think we want to see where technology takes us. We know that server racks now have their own cooling systems and things are becoming smaller, so it'll be interesting to just kind of see what they look like in the future. We did with contract when we were with MMU and had our servers in their server room, we were paying an annual fee, with the last fee paid to MMU in 2019 of $13,000 annually. So this is a reduction from what we would have been paying MMU. So I'm going to pause, Mr. Mayor, and if it's okay, I wouldn't mind having Brian Hart just talk about the transition again and whatever dark fiber means in our redundancy system. So.
Okay, thank you, Sharon, and welcome Brian Hart, representing the Computer Man.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Burns and the council. As you know, late in 2019, we transitioned from the MMU data center to the SMSU data center, and it was kind of a natural fit because the state terminates their fiber out there, and the state provides the internet, which is a very key component to the city's IT infrastructure. So that was a natural fit, as well as all the city-owned fiber terminates there as well. So all the different locations that the city has is all tied together with fiber back to SMSU. The other benefit of SMSU is kind of the physical security part of it as well. It's obviously locked down, and they don't let just anybody into their data center, so that's an advantage as well. Generator power, fire suppression is also an important part of that data center. So cost-wise, it's very reasonable. If you were to go to a hosting provider and get rack space outside of the city of Marshall, it would cost considerably more than what I think SMSU is offering. So overall, that transition from SMSU or from MMU to SMSU, I think has gone very smooth. I think some of the city staff would agree with that, and we're in a much better position now. Sharon also alluded to data replication and security, of course, huge part of IT now. And just want you to know all the data that the city has is replicated on a daily basis up to Granite Falls, and that has worked flawlessly from day one, as well as maintaining local backups. I was involved a little bit with this contract, and I read through it, and I think it's very, very reasonable, and SMSU has been a great partner.
Thank you, Brian.
You never asked where black fiber is.
Dark fiber.
Dark fiber, excuse me.
Dark fiber really is just unused fiber. So data communications over fiber is done with light, and so they call it dark fiber when it's not actually in use. So.
Thank you. I mean,
So the idea is you do not want to have dark fiber,
Yeah,
you want
that's
to have lit fiber, you want it to work.
It's dark.
I had no idea, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
A lot of dark fiber.
Fail to dial 811 before you dig.
That could be.
That's great.
John?
Just Mary, kind of a very small thing, and sure it's backed up, but, a lot of comments through here, clearing access or whatever with Sean Hedman data center. What happens if Sean isn't there? Is there a backup?
Yeah, so I've got a couple other contacts at SMSU that we could use as a backup. I will say this, over the past 2 years, my physical presence at the SMSU data center has been very, very limited with remote capabilities. It's a rare occasion that I actually need to go there and do any kind of changes. So Sean has been very good, but I assume if Sean isn't available, I can work down the list to
Okay.
the next person, so.
And any other questions? If not, thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
What is the wishes of the council pertaining to this agreement?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 13. This is the 2022 Ucap Bus Shelter Project. We have a memorandum of understanding between Community Transit of the United Community Action Partnership and the City of Marshall to consider. Jason Anderson, City Engineer, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, we do have a memo of understanding here between Ucap Transit and the City of Marshall. They have a 2022 grant project for a total amount of $450,000, and they'd like to put those dollars towards providing more bus shelter access at all their bus stop locations. So you have numerous different layouts included in your packet that are just kind of preliminary sites that could be chosen to place shelters. There's no cost in this project to the City of Marshall directly. This is entirely paid for by Ucap, but they do need the City of Marshall to serve as the engineer and the grant sponsor. So that is what this memo does, is it outlines that arrangement. This project is also included in our capital improvement plan, and we are prepared to deliver it. In the event that we can recover engineering fees through the grant, we'll do so, but we're not sure that we can do that at this time. So we may be, by this agreement, providing free services. We may be able to collect those fees. So if there's any questions, I can answer them, but we would recommend to approve the agreement.
Okay, Craig?
Just a question, as these stops are established, are we providing snow removal or clean out for those, or what's the condition for that?
They're supposed to clean them out, but I
There.
think that from time to time, we do help with that.
Sure, okay. No, and I'm fine with that, I just wanted to know that, that we're talking about that, because I know some of them that were improved, like on Third, that was part of the understanding because of some other removal that we would assist them with making sure that those key ones were cleared out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Jim?
This came forward to PI&T yesterday, and we did look at this all. It's good placement. I think Russ and I went over it, and I think this is a good deal for City Marshall, and it's going to enhance our bus traffic. The only question that came up, and we don't have an answer yet, there's no bus stops. Is it west of 4th Street? So I think it's going to be approached to Ucap, why there's, that's the only thing you may notice, there's nothing west of 4th Street. So, but otherwise, I think it's a very good project for the City Marshall.
Any other input?
Just a comment that I will be abstaining on this vote, and since I'm on the UCAP board, but I will bring that comment back. Jim, it's a good point.
I'm going to bring it
Great.
back
Yeah.
to make our tech too.
Does that require an abstention, being on the UCAP board?
I don't know, that probably just as easy to, since it is between the two, well, I think I'll abstain and
Yeah, I think you should abstain. Yes.
be safe.
Okay, any other discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Craig. Now, discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll note the one abstention. Okay, we'll move then to agenda item number 14, consider approval of the City Hall final change order, the amount of $41,647, with the issuance of the final payment upon completion of the remaining items as noted in the final inspection report. Sharon.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lozinski and I are looking at each other on this one. I know that he can take the bulk of the discussion, but our City Hall Committee, I think, met at least twice on this and had long discussions about reductions. And you see in great detail here where the reductions occurred. They were not satisfied with particular aspects of certain parts of the construction. And we're able to lower that after discussions with the, not only the general contractor, Brennan, but also some architectural revisions as well are included in this particular change order. But I will defer to the chairman of the City Hall Committee, Councilmember Lozinski.
As you can see, this change order started at 78,000. I think it was more than one meeting. There's several meetings, several calls on this, involved winter heat with our stucco, involved doors in the wrong spot, and between a lot of discussions between the committee and Brennan, and Engen was also involved in these discussions too. That's the architect. We got this negotiated down to $41,647, and this is the last change order. I believe this is the last bill.
We have one tonight.
The sheetrock that Ray cut for the time capsule does not count as a change order.
You're coming in tomorrow doing that on your own, right?
I am not. At this time, though, I also have some other numbers I'd like to throw out there before we vote on this. Sharon and I sat and went over the actual total City Hall revenue and expenses, which Deb, I'll give you a copy of this when we're done so you get the numbers right. Because most people say all the time, city projects, government projects come in over budget. This one did not. We had a total budget of $7,416,114. That's what we had to work with. After our expenditures, we came in at $7,374,547. And so we're $41,000 under budget, and that includes leaving in the $400,000 change order for the infamous wall. And I think it's fine, we're under budget, leave it in the City Hall budget. But I think that gives credit to our staff, to the City Hall Committee, that this project came in under budget. And I just want to make that known that it's under budget. Our construction cost was $5,779,000. SMSU was $165,907, and there's various numbers. I don't want to read them all out. Sharon can email them to you, but as a chairman of this committee, I'm very proud to say as we go through this last change order, we're under budget. That was my goal when this started. And we're under budget with a substantial change order when we took down the hotel. So that is, between Russ and John, I want to give them credit, and I want to give Ray credit for really watching over this project, making sure when something got deducted, that we deducted it. That when something wasn't needed, we took it out and we got the credit for it. So there's a lot of work done into this, and city government can come in under budget, and we did on this project.
Well, thank you, Jim, and thank you for your leadership and the work of the City Hall Committee on this, as well as the staff who put in many, many hours on this project also. So thank you. Russ?
Mr. Mayor, I would just concur with Councilman Lozinski. And again, we should also recognize Ilya Gutman and even Sharon Hansen, and because those people, as well as numerous other city staff, put in a lot of time. But I just want to bring the notice just to one item, and that's letter G, related to winter conditions. So this tonight is $41,647, but that $33,545, if we would not have tore down the hotel, we would not have had that expense. So, and the comment I've heard around town is that while City Hall looks great and it looks nice and everything else, people say, thank you for tearing down the eyesore that's been on Main Street for 20 years. So I think I'm pretty close to that. If we wouldn't have tore down that hotel, we wouldn't have had that most of that anyway, $33,000. So it's a big number, and I, for one, don't like change orders, but, and I kind of maybe disagree with Jim. I think at one point, I think we were told by one of the contractors that the last change order was going to be close to $90,000. So I know we all had sticker shock when he mentioned that, but.
Sticker shock, you peel me off.
Yeah. But anyway, it's, I thank Councilman Lozinski for keeping us on track as well, so.
Any other questions or input?
I just want to say I appreciate coming in under budget. That's a huge milestone. It would have been even more effective if it would have come in on time.
Never happy, are you?
He got a smile on his face.
But he's happy, he's just not elated.
With that, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the change order.
Second.
The last change order.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Russ. Discussion? To a vote? And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 15. This is the Trunk Highway 23 Independence Park Sewer Realignment Project. We have a change order to consider, as well as the acknowledgement of the final pay request. Once again, Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. This was a project that improved the outlet on the Runnings Pond, as well as the intake pipe into that pond, and rerouted some sanitary sewer around that pond and by Midwest Bank over to Nwakama Street. This was to help with some failing sewer under the highway and reroute some sewer that was in the way for the 4-bay expansion that's going to take place next year across the road in Independence Park Pond. Project was budgeted for $189,000 roughly, and the final amount is $184,211.25. Staff would recommend to approve the final reconciling change order and the final payment.
Any questions for Jason?
Move approval?
Motion by Craig, seconded by Don. Discussion?
Approve a negative change order.
Exactly.
Does that put a smile on your face?
It does.
That makes him ecstatic.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Moving then to the next agenda item, which would be agenda item number 16, South First Street, Greeley Street, Williams Street Reconstruction Project. Consider the resolution receiving the feasibility report and calling for a public hearing. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a project, one of our reconstructs on next year's capital improvement plan. The reconstruction of the streets that you mentioned, including utilities, streets, sidewalks, driveways, everything. Included in the packet is the feasibility report that covers all the proposed improvements and indicates that the project is feasible and we can deliver it on time and in a cost-effective manner. This project was brought to PIT yesterday, actually, at their meeting, and we did discuss a few things there related to this project. yeah, I'll leave that to PIT members to discuss with us here if they have anything they want to add, but you see the engineer's estimates listed below, including contingency and engineering fees at just under $2 million. All improvements will be assessed according to our special assessment policy, and we're calling for a public improvement hearing on improvement for December 14th. And prior to that council hearing, we'll have a public informational meeting with the residents as well. We'll hold that here in this room. I don't have the date off the top of my head. I think it's in the feasibility report, but I believe it's the week before. So we will send the notices out for the hearing as well as the public informational meeting at the same time after this meeting. So if there's any questions, I can answer them.
Okay, thank you. Questions or input?
Well, the input I'd have is that PIT, we did have short discussions, but I think it'd be best to save a lot of that for the public hearing. I mean, this one didn't have any major discussions besides maybe some parking in front of the old Schwann House. Other than that, I think at the public information meeting or public hearing, it'd be best to have those discussions.
And Mr. Mayor, just one thing, and I apologize to Jason, I didn't see this yesterday. If by chance they can start in April, the contractor would start in April, because I look at the 150th next year, if we've got some roads tore up in that area, it might affect it, might not, but if they could, I mean, the contractors did a great job this year getting started early, finishing early or finishing on time, and if it's possible, maybe depending on what the weather does in April, of course.
Yeah, that'll largely be dependent on our ability to get the project designed and out the door and bid and get first on their list. And then, of course, the contractor's ability to come in early. So there'll be some things dependent on that, but that would be our goal, is to get it going right away as soon as the weather turns.
And then the other quick question I have, Jason, looking at this one project alone will take care of our engineering fee to MMU, won't it? Between the water main replacement and the sanitary sewer replacement. It's over 400,000, whatever.
Right, so the amount of MMU's participation costs in this project, I don't have that number right now to tell you for sure, but I would guess that this would be close, yeah. Or I believe it would be, yes.
Yeah. And John?
Just kind of a comment back, again, probably more so for the public hearing. We do these and we go through the meetings, and I know you talk about the assessments and you talk about sidewalks, and then when it comes time, we have people in here saying, well, why did we have that sidewalk and whatever, why this assessment? It just, if there's any way to reinforce that, I know you cover it. I've sat in on those meetings, you go through it, but still, there's the question, why did I still have to pay for my driveway? Why do I need a sidewalk here? I didn't want a sidewalk. We might as well get those covered early because we know we're going to have it, and just get ready for it. So just have those discussions early on.
Yes, will do.
Okay. With that, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 17. This is Halber Road Reconstruction Project. Similar action here. The resolution receiving the feasibility report and calling for a hearing on the improvement. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. Correct, this is similar to the last item. Halber Road's on the CIP for next year to be reconstructed. The project would include sanitary sewer and storm sewer replacements. Storm sewer is mostly just inlets, so it's not a lot. It's sanitary sewer that's the predominant utility in this project. Feasibility reports included in the packet, and we did discuss this project at PIT as well. We came forward to PIT with a proposed street width of roughly 36 feet as measured from back of curb to back of curb. After discussing with the committee, they advised that we should go to 38 feet, which is what we did across the highway on Michigan and Superior with those projects. So we've taken that into consideration. We'll plan to move forward with that, as provided council doesn't provide any alternative feedback. We also discussed surfacing materials, concrete versus bituminous, and right now our guidance is to move forward with concrete, 7-inch concrete, similar to what we did on the other side of the road as well. You see a construction amount with engineering and admin at $929,000 at this point. That's our estimate. Once again, we would propose to assess in accordance with our policy, and I can answer any questions if we have any. We would propose the hearing on improvement to be December 14th as well.
Go Russ first.
Craig?
You can go Russ first.
Jason, just a clarification for the council. The street width is going from, we're reducing it anyway, from 43 to 38.
Yes, thank you. It's 43 feet today. There's
we're
still a
decreasing it.
reduction down to 38 feet.
Right, okay.
Staff was just trying to really put an emphasis on right-sizing the street and keeping assessments as low as we can.
And I'll let you after me, Craig, but part of it is just so you know, it's about a $30,000 to $35,000, $40,000 increase to go to 38 feet. So I think it's worth discussing. But I don't drive a truck, and that's where, when we have the public hearing, for those who drive trucks, what is the right size here? Because it is assessed to the property owners, the extra 40,000. It also costs taxpayers the extra 40,000. But I think that's a good discussion to have again at the public meeting. Our recommendation again was 38 feet.
Yep.
Craig?
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I apologize, because I was not at the meeting yesterday. And that's my question based on the width, because I know at least Turkey Valley bought out the former Schwann's cold storage facility there, and there's trucks there almost constantly, and there's multiple trailers in the dock, you know, and they're basically, if there's a tractor hooked up to the trailer, they're right at the gutter with the nose of the truck. So getting another trailer in there on 38 feet when the trailers are 53 feet long could be problematic. So I'm sure there's going to be a conversation about swing distance and that type of thing. Now, depending on how the approaches are lined up on the other side and how agreeable the other side is, you'd only need about 3 feet of that apron on the cross to swing the steering axle to get the truck in. But that's going to be a question. And then has there been any pre-discussion to these property owners? No, because there's a number of undeveloped lots that are going to share on this. And I know for sure one of the property owners that's in there is probably going to get shell-shocked on the value of his hay meadow.
Thank you, Councilman. Understood. There's not been any preliminary conversations. When the public informational meeting notice goes out, I would expect that to be the first time they've heard of it, unless they've been monitoring our capital improvement plan, because this street's been in there for as long as I've been with the city of Marshall.
Well, and it's in terrible need of this work. I mean, nobody should debate that. You almost need an off-road vehicle to get through there. I mean, it's well overdue.
It's probably one of the worst in town.
It is. I fully agree. Yep. So I'll be curious. I mean, I'm in full support of this. I just know that we're going to need to get into some pretty good discussions with property owners, but it's also going to improve the value of their land by having a well-improved street there too, because that's right next to our industrial park.
If I may, I haven't put together any of the estimates yet, but with our new policy, we do have some caps on commercial industrial properties. I plan to be at that public informational meeting with some proposed maximums on the street cost for these property owners, so we'll be prepared to deliver that number. I haven't put it together yet, but if I were to guess, I would say it's in the neighborhood of $40,000 to $50,000. So it's a substantial amount of money.
Right, but compared to the value of the land, it's probably reflective of that, but I think I really appreciate you being prepared to talk about that early in.
And of course, understanding that we're making a 40, 50, 60-year investment depending, but hopefully a good 40-year investment is what we can promise.
What's the water main situation? I mean, if a wet business wanted to go in there, the water and sanitary sewer is adequate?
Yeah, we're choosing not to replace the water at this time because the sizing is adequate and the material is PVC. It might be an older vintage of PVC, but MMU is making the decision to leave that in place.
Okay. It's on them if they have to fix it. It's their street then.
That's right.
Yep, okay.
And Craig, one of the other things we talked about at the meeting yesterday was if we had it at 36 feet, Jason and Jesse were recommending a wider driveway.
Yeah.
And we talked about if the street was that narrow, the cost per property. Okay, the city only picks up 12 feet of the driveway, so if you go 36 feet, the cost factor is going to be a wash versus 36 or 38.
Yeah, good point.
So just to make you aware that the city staff did bring that up at 36, so.
I agree. Those are always good discussions at the committee, so I appreciate that. Yeah.
And it may not completely make all of the truck drivers happy, but we do have turning templates that we can drop in on all the driveways to show that they can make it. It's probably as tight as you can possibly go, but it shows that you can make it. So we'll plan to have those available. There's a few in the packet, but
Yeah.
we can help work with the property owners on that.
That's how you screen talent and longevity.
Any other input? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Russ, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 18, the Mpca Chloride Reduction Grant. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize to council for the late addition to the packet. This wasn't initially in the packet. It didn't make it into the packet until this afternoon. But we were approached, our wastewater team was approached late last week by Bolton and Mink regarding an Mpca chloride reduction grant that's available with an application deadline of December 10th. So that deadline is before the next time we'd be able to get in front of the council. So we thought it was important to come up front right away. What they're proposing to do with us is work with Marshall and Worthington to apply for this grant in the amount of $250,000. That also requires a 25% grant match. And the idea is the goal of the grant, I guess, is to reduce chloride. So it's perfect for communities that have these limits or are staring down the barrel of these limits. And Worthington and Marshall both fit that criteria. We don't know exactly what we would do with the grant. Bolton and Mink has proposed that we could offer rebates or incentives to change out older softener units as an example. Wastewater staff and myself have just briefly discussed maybe some commercial or industrial type of incentives as well. Wanting to do a little more research on that and a little more discussion to determine where the most bang for our buck could be. But the proposal would essentially offer up around $100,000 for us in our community to use to do both maybe promotion, maybe rebates and incentive. We're going to find out what's all qualifying, but about anything to reduce chlorides, I think, is going to be a qualifying type of expense. What would be expected of us is a contribution of $31,250. We would spend $31,250 to obtain 100, essentially, while also obtaining Bolton and Mink to carry the load, do all the reporting to PCA, create all the documents, track anything that we want to track, essentially administer the grant, which is also a plus to us. We have a lot of work to do and we're pretty stretched the way it is typically. So that's what they're proposing. I usually don't like to come to council with something not a little more put together, but in the essence of time, we wanted to bring it forward and see if the council had a desire to allow staff to write a letter of support for this or give them whatever they need for the application and get it moving forward. Wastewater would have some budget available for this. We did budget a significant amount for outreach and rebates in the budget if we got to that point. And that's something that we talked about years ago as we started this whole plan. So we would have the funding through wastewater to do this. I would still propose to bring in our partners at MMU and have them part of the discussion and part of the conversation and planning and just really be a part of it. I don't know if they would financially contribute, but for sure they would contribute with their all their professionals over there to help us make sure we do things right. So I can answer any questions. I think that's about all I know at this point in time, but you see a proposed cost outline in your memo, and that's kind of what we're working with for now.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Questions?
I have a quick question. If we don't reach our chloride levels, and maybe John, you know this answer too, the Mpca, Municipal Pollution Control, can fine the city of Marshall, correct?
They can, if we're not reaching it as we come up to the permit term, our next step would probably be to try to get a variance from that requirement.
Is there a cost involved? I mean, I'm trying to justify the 31,000. Is there a cost involved with the permit or the fine? Or
I think it is important that the city of Marshall demonstrate that we're working very hard to meet the limit. And one way to do that is to get a grant from the PCA for chloride reduction and go for it. In addition to the $7 million grant that we got to do a very large project at the water treatment plant. So I think that we have a lot of evidence to say to the PCA, we're really working hard at this, but I think we actually have to be working hard at it.
And the current budget
dovetails really well.
The current budget has an amount for public education and that is close to or equal to the amount that the match would be. So this only enhances the amount of public education that could be done to ultimately reach that reduced level of chloride loading. Greg, I'm sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, I just, this, I think, really dovetails well with the efforts we've already committed to, and I think it does show what Jason talked about. It shows that we're doing due diligence and making a good effort in earnest to continue to do the chloride reduction that we committed to when we took the grant.
John?
Yeah, just a couple of comments at Jim's point. We do have a few things that are not the most likable solution, but we do have a few things we can do in order to meet those agreements or those levels if need to. As far as the 31,000, if we're spending 31,000 with getting 100,000 back, that's a pretty good return on investment. So I think this is a good idea, and I would make a motion to authorize the staff to submit the application.
Motion by John, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Don, discussion?
John, just refresh my memory. You and I toured wastewater. What did Bob say? Are they halfway there with the reduction? Do you remember?
No, we're we're a little closer than, a little further than halfway there.
Okay.
I would say we're probably
2/3?
Isn't it? Yeah.
about 2/3.
Okay.
You can see some variation on the graphs that I've seen, but we are definitely dropping the levels and significantly. But yeah, we're not quite there yet.
Right, and if I may just add, we've gotten the low-hanging fruit, and now once you get that initial drop, that's where the work begins. So that's where we have to try to squeeze everything we can out of this and see if we can meet that limit.
And Jason, I think you're right. It may need to look at some of the commercial side of it to help bring that down, because I think residential has done quite a bit, but we need to bring the commercial down as well.
So I think this is a great idea. The only problem I have, and it almost, there's two questions. Number one, what's Bolton Mink's cut of it? Because we're not going to get the full 100,000. Bolton and Mink is going to have to get something. They're not doing this for free.
About 50.
And the other thing is, John said it's a good return on investment. Well, sometimes things sound too good to be true, and this kind of rings to me. It's almost too good to be true. And I see both sides of it. I just don't know where I stand on it. Again, like you said, Jason, it would have been nice to have more information, but it's time sensitive. My question would be to Bolton and Mink, why didn't they bring it to us? This grant wasn't developed yesterday.
Sure. Thanks for that question, and I can hopefully answer some of it. I personally haven't had a chance to talk with Bolton and Mink about this, but I know Bob Van Moore and his team have. I plan to meet with them and Bolton and Mink to talk more. One thing that we're going to make them do is put down the services into writing, specifically with the scope of what they're going to do, what we're going to do, understanding our relationship. Where they stand to gain is they stand to make a lot on engineering fees. I believe the two $50,000 items and the $12,500 items would be for their taking. And what that pays them for is handling all the paperwork, creating a program, creating educational information, helping us administer it all. It's essentially paying their staff to hand out the money and to help us distinguish who's deserving of receiving the money. So it's their payment for initiating and running the grant, and hence why they reached out to us, because they do stand to gain in this as well as us. We stand to gain by getting significantly more money, more than tripling our amount of money that we will have to play with. Essentially, the 31,000 turns into 100 or maybe more. This isn't a formalized amount yet, and they stand to make some money on it as well by utilizing their professionals to help us out. So,
Jason, what happens if we run over the $100,000? Let's say this program takes off, and so we have to pay $160,000 in rebates.
we'll have to determine what the program really even is. We haven't done that yet, but I imagine that we'll frame it as a first come, first serve. There's a specific amount of money and a specific way to access it, and when we hit the limit, we hit the limit.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Jason. What's the wishes of the council? The request is to submit the grant application.
And I know Steve makes a good point that sometimes that free money comes with too many strings. I don't think this has PCA blind strings on it, because I think we've already committed to the goal that they have. And I know nothing about this other than what I've seen tonight. Obviously, I'm disconnected. But Bolton and Mink are probably, they're our best front runner right now to have their finger on the pulse statewide. It's a lot of money, but we kind of get what we pay for with them too. I mean, they're pretty smart to the whole process, and they're pretty well respected in the industry as far as with the PCA. So, I mean, I think if we need anybody to carry our data, and then especially partnering with Worthington, I think that's a smart place to go if we had to take a choice. I'm not endorsing them that we're getting every dime's worth, because that's a lot of money, but that's the game they're playing, because this is kind of chlorides aren't new, but this whole reduction thing is a pretty new thing, and they were in a lot with the PCA on kind of writing the expectations. So they have a little bit of the inside line too, which I think there's value there.
Yeah. Just for public's knowledge, PCA stands for Pollution Control Agency. We're using a lot of abbreviations that people might not know.
They're the state version of the EPA.
Just a little point of order as you two yap over there. There's a motion on the floor that has not been seconded yet.
Seconded. It was
seconded.
Don seconded it.
Seconded it, yeah.
So calm down.
It was called for discussion.
Bob says, I don't think we got a motion on the floor, so it's Bob's fault. I just wanted to stand up speaking.
I didn't ask any
Alex, are we
questions
getting a
until there
lot
was
of
call
hits
for
online
discussion.
right now?
No question, no.
Good thing there's.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Thank goodness Kyle keeps us in line.
My wife hates that word yapping.
Somebody has to.
Close the voting. And the motion passes. So we'll move on to Commission Board Liaison Reports. Actually, from my standpoint, the Southwest Regional Development Commission did meet this past Thursday. I was not able to attend it because that was also the Coalition Greater Minnesota Cities meeting, which I was in attendance at. So, speak to that when we get to individual items. Craig?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Steve?
EDA met, but I was unable to attend because of work.
Don?
Planning Commission had no meeting this month, no items on the agenda. Public Housing did meet last week, and they're running along just fine over there without any hiccup at the moment. So.
John?
MMU did meet, and most of the work discussion was on regarding the budget. They did move ahead with some approval of the 2022 vehicles, just so they could get the order in, because they had down to the point where no more orders were accepted. So they did approve that portion of the budget. EDA met as well and decided to restart the facade improvement program, making some changes and some additions to it to get it going. And then we had some discussion on Block 11 and some informational discussion on Southwest West Central Service Co-op and their needs for buildings. So, plus some other smaller items. So that's the extent of it.
Thank you, John. Russ?
Mine have not met, Mr. Mayor.
Jim?
Mine did not meet.
We'll move then to council member individual items. Jim?
I have nothing. I think I spoke of mine earlier.
Russ?
Nothing.
John?
A couple of things. Did have the opportunity Saturday to attend the Hmong New Year celebration that was over in Tracy, and very nice event, very colorful, a lot of good activity in there. Just kind of a reminder on that, the Hmong community has been here for 30 years. And, think back, some of you young guys may not remember 30 years back that much, but remember really the community started because George Spang, Heartland Turkey, needed workers. And kind of the same thing we're in now. We keep talking about we need workers. George went out, talked with communities looking for people interested to come to work, and then got busy and worked with various communities to help establish location for homes for them. So really was a start. We needed workers for jobs that we had, and that's kind of how it started. Now we've got a very active community with very active participants, some city council, various other boards and things that are going on. So it's proved to be very well. The other thing is just a comment that I found information out on Sunday. We had talked before that some activity going on at the Armory, where they're going to do some expansion and do some work there. The result of that next year is that Heart to Heart's going to be looking for a location because they're not going to be able to use the Armory. So just put a word out that if anybody knows of a location or has a place to that they may be able to use, they would like to have an idea what they're going to be doing next year. So they're okay this year, of course, but next year they've been told to be ready to have it at a different location. And they fill up that Armory with everything for about a week. So it needs a building about that size and for at least 6 days. So just pass it on.
Okay, thank you, John. Craig?
Yeah, just one item really, Mr. Mayor. There's been some concerns within the Ward 3 about conditions at a couple of rental properties, mostly outside, and met with city staff this morning, discussed those, and I appreciate the fact that they've been following process on these complaint properties now that are actually coming up for action with a sunset or a deadline of the end of this week. So just want to say that I really appreciate the work that our staff does, and when people in the community have concerns or complaints about property, don't hesitate to call City Hall and talk to the staff about it. They're very receptive, and that's really how the system works. So just appreciate staff's time and their efforts, and I think it speaks well for the community.
Steve?
I have nothing.
John?
Just one item. Since I've recently retired and live on South Hill Street, somebody some time ago made a comment about the daytime parking around Hill Street Place and the nursing home and the hospital area there. Yeah, it's full. And, maybe the public improvement or some committee can maybe take a look at what we can do maybe with parking and something in that area.
Don, it's funny you bring that up because we had that discussion just yesterday, and I've been having that discussion with Jason for probably about a year now. Our hope is, and you can answer this question, Dr. Meister, is there's a bunch of people moving back to the old clinic that will help hopefully alleviate some of our parking issues along there.
Very likely. Very likely.
So, but yes, there's been discussions, even with Jason and I, we've been discussing, do we have residential parking permits? How do we solve this problem? Because it is bad. It is, the hospital was a good neighbor. When it comes to parking, they are not a good neighbor anymore during the week.
Well, I appreciate the fact that they actually opened up the new parking area along College Drive that they purchased a number of years ago, and they've actually blacktopped part of that. But it's still, we still have, you're right, a lot of parking on Hill Street.
And I know even at PI&T yesterday, we discussed their streets along there. I don't know if this is public. Their streets that are going to lose parking on because of snow plowing and stuff. So
right.
I know the city staff is working on it. Is it Kevin Schroeder over there? He's working on it. I know he's worked with the staff. So thank you for bringing it up, but it's been brought up to the staff for quite a while now.
Okay, and Jason, you're well aware of that too, so thank you. Anything else, Don? No. From my standpoint, I mentioned I was in attendance at the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities meeting. It was actually held in Wilmer last Thursday, Friday. Sharon was also in attendance. I think in future reports, you're going to give a more complete report. But I would just say the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities does a good job in representing a very focused group of actions and that are legislative actions that affect communities like Marshall and Greater Minnesota. And some of those things have to do with local government aid and some have to do with regulations. Interesting about the discussion that we have every year about street widths. There actually is a legislative proposal to restrict residential streets for new construction to 32 feet. It's really part of stormwater and runoff and trying to control the cost of development. So there is that discussion. Of course, the league, or the coalition is really taking a position that, good idea, but that should be a local decision, not a mandate. So with that, let me move then to our staff reports. Sharon?
I'm going to present during the budget discussion, so.
Jason?
I'll be really brief. On November 30th next week, I'll be serving with MnDOT and reviewing engineering proposals for College Drive to select the consultants. I think I've mentioned this to you once already. I've done it once already. They resolicited, so we'll be doing it all over again. It was so much fun. We're going to do it again. So that'll be next week. And then on December 7th, David Shelkoff mentioned at MMU, we'll be meeting with MMU staff and city staff to coordinate the next round of outreach about chlorides and water softener adjustments and what we're going to do to help get the message out and achieve our goals. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Dennis?
I have the closed session to report on a couple of issues later.
We'll move then to the information items for the council's information, including the building permits. Agenda item 25 is the consideration to go into closed session for attorney-client discussion. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Don. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting, and the motion passes. We will go into closed session at this time.